Welcome to the MacArthur Memorial Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Williams. Join me as we explore the life and legacy of General of the Army Douglas MacArthur and discuss a wide range of military history topics, from the American Civil War to the Korean War.
Hey everybody, this is Jim Zobel at MacArthur Memorial. I had my good friend Sherman Fleek show up to do some research for a new book he's working on, and thought we'd sit down and talk about the book that just came out. Sherman wrote a book called MacArthur and West Point, How the General and the Academy Shaped Each Other. Sherman was an Army officer and then was a professor at West Point. And I think that's kind of where he got the idea to put this book together. Sherman, just to start off, going into this book, did you find out anything about MacArthur that you didn't know before you started?
Well, it's great to be here with you today, Jim. And so I was the command historian, which is responsible for the institutional history of West Point. I was not on faculty, but because they were short on instructors in the history department, I did teach for 8 years. So that was a cool thing. Did I learn anything in the process of researching and writing this book? Absolutely, without a doubt. It gave me a whole new spectrum of an amazing and sometimes controversial historical figure in American history. But his influence and support of the U.S. Military Academy is pretty much unmatched in the modern era. And so that's an important thing. And so the book is almost a biography because it follows his whole life. What I wanted to capture was not just MacArthur at West Point, 4 years as a cadet, 3 years as superintendent, that's 7 years of his 84 years, and his, 52 years in uniform. So, but how it influenced him, and it did, and that's what the book is all about, and that's why it was a whole different angle. But I learned a lot, and it was. Actually, I wrote a good share of it during COVID days, so it was fun.
As the son of an Army officer, basically he lived all over the country as a kid. I mean, Western outposts in cosmopolitan Washington in the 19th century. And he had always envisioned on going to West Point, and I think that his dad, Arthur MacArthur, even said that to Peyton March at one time. There's definitely some makings of a soldier in that boy. And so, I mean, it's this thing that he's dreamed of his whole life, but yet when he gets there, he is immediately confronted with a part of West Point that I don't think he had really counted on. Can you go into that about the hazing at West Point at this time?
Yes, it's an interesting quality. Now, hazing, I suppose, is in other colleges, but at West Point, it became an art form. From the early days, the 1820s and 30s, there was a degree of harassment, discipline, just like in basic training, ranger school, other things. That's just to test a person's ability and control, and can they operate, can they under adversity. That's what training is all about. It's like sports, there's some definite aspects where you're challenged, all right? But up into the Civil War, it was there were some physical things, yes, and there was some harassment or hazing. But after the Civil War, it became, like I said, an art form. It was a methodical science, and the cadets were the upperclassmen of the 4 years. They remembered what it was like 3 years earlier, and they just conceived all kinds of manners, exercises, things to put people through. Part of the aspect is that West Point had pretty well become stagnant, and it was caught in this paternalism. So they couldn't go anywhere. They never left campus. So what do you do on a Saturday afternoon? And so on. So MacArthur, being the son of a Medal of Honor recipient and also general officer, was a special target. And in his class was U.S. Grant III, and he too caught it on the chin. Phil Sheridan's son, I think his name was Henry, a few years earlier, same thing. anything that could bring out bestiality in these cadets and all their kept up or sheltered life there, pent up emotions. They unleashed it on the newcomers and so on. What's interesting, 2 or 3 of the main abusers were of MacArthur, as the hearings brought out, were from the South.
And you're talking about
from the South
because of the hazing. There was a cadet who died after they left the Oscar booze, and MacArthur was called to testify because they found out about what it. And tell us about that. His testifying before Congress.
Oscar Booz from Ohio. He arrived a year before MacArthur in 1898, and I'll just say it. He was a white Caucasian fella because there had been a few. Well, there'd been three African American graduates by then. Were they hazed? Yes, but they were also silenced, which is a different form of hazing. So the other cadets, the non-black cadets, they weren't hazed unless they did. Silenced unless they did something extraordinarily bad, usually with their own vision and interpretation of what being honorable is. The last silencing happened in 1973 to a cadet named Pelosi. Isn't that amazing? Yes. So silencing, but this was a racial thing as opposed to just having fun with the underclassmen. So the Oscar gets there, and there's something about him that he either a mannerism or something that he becomes a target, or he fails the first 2 or 3 episodes, gimmicks, whatever they put him through. And so what do? They come back at him again, and they come back at him again. Now, when MacArthur, he was brutally chastised and harassed through one night, and the next morning they found him and he was screaming in pain, but he fell out for formation and he didn't complain. He didn't report anyone. So he passed the test where Bose probably didn't. And he was in several boxing matches, probably got a concussion or worse. And then they forced him to drink copious amounts of Tabasco sauce. Now that's an interesting torture, under like waterboarding or something. But it basically ruined his throat and his larynx and everything. And then he resigned the fall after about 3 months of this because they just they didn't let him go. And that's what happens, You find a weakling, you try to break that weakling, And those who learn the overcome rise to the top. And so he died in early December of 1900. MacArthur was in his second year. Now, they didn't use the terms that we use today, plebe, and firstie, cow, and yearling, and plebe. It's first classman, second classman, and so on. That's the way they were. So MacArthur was already shining bright. He was on the baseball team the second year, and then there were 3. Well, this was a national incident with Bose dying. Congress became very upset, and so did the Army, and the senior leadership, and the Secretary of War. I think it was Root at that time, and they wanted answers. They wanted it fixed. Now, others had tried to fix hazing, but it's just a slippery pillow you could just never get your arms around. Because they did it at night. They had meetings. They met in secret places, all right? And they had their own idea, the cadets, of what honorable manhood is. They had nothing else to do, okay? So there were 3 inquiries. The first one was held by Colonel Mills, Albert Mills himself, Medal of Honor recipient.
Who's the superintendent.
Who was superintendent. And Major Hine was the commandant at that time, Otto Hine, I think his name was. And it was just a whitewash kind of thing. And he reported back that West Point is clear and innocent of any wrongdoing. We didn't cause his death. It was a year. He's been gone for a year. It's not our fault. Okay, there you go. Then they got General Brooke, to come up from the Governor's Island. He was a Department of the East commander, and he held his own investigation that lasted a few days, also in December. Now, that was directed by the War Department, all right? And again, it was just, they discovered a few things, they realized a few things, but once again, the report that was issued, or the follow-up, the summary, did not indict or accuse any responsibility to the leadership of West Point or the academy itself. So, but by that time, the gears in Congress were moving. And so the congressman came out. They went to the Bose family and got some affidavits and testimony from them in Ohio. Then they came back to West Point, talked to some people in New York City. Then they came up to West Point and held that. And there were 60, 80 cadets that were involved and gave testimony, as MacArthur did. And it was pretty interesting. And so that went on into January. And what is interesting in all his writings, MacArthur, and all the biographers has picked up on this, that MacArthur never squealed on anyone. He never ratted anyone out. He never
Didn't he give up names?
He gave up names of guys that
had
already
been busted.
Dismissed. Yeah, right. That's what he claimed, and that's what he said, because I think his mother told him that the worst thing you can be is a tattletale, right? And so he lived.
Let me ask about the mother. I mean, we talked about, because of his dad, I mean, probably one of the most famous officers at that time. MacArthur's, catching the hazing because of that. But yet his mom's there too. And so there's got to be a, you mama's boy, what is your mom doing here?
This is true. And it comes up when I do tours of West Point, it come up again and again and again. Now, the old West Point Hotel is gone, but the laundress woman's house is still there, where they did all laundry. Right. Okay. And that's right on Trophy Point, the most scenic part of West Point. It's just fabulous. And so that was an issue. But right down the hall was Mrs. Grant.
Sure. It was a common thing.
Yeah, it was. And so when you've got the money and your kids are away and you got your youngest at West Point and there's a hotel there, sure enough. And your husband is in the Philippines.
Sure. And your other son is serving in the Pacific as
That's
well.
right.
So,
Arnold, what is he? Arthur the
third.
Is he the third?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And so, but, some of the cadets and others at West Point, when I was there, he was a mommy's boy. I said, yeah, wait till you get to World War I.
Yeah. Well, so, and it seems like later on,
so this is nothing new. When I was a soldier in Germany as a teenager, my father was a retired major, and I got hell for it in the 70s. Your dad's a major? What are you doing as enlisted guys? A bitty, here I am. So MacArthur did name names. He did. Dockery was still there. He was from Missouri, and he was later dismissed. And there were 2 or 3 other names that he listed because it was in the second trial, actually, the second hearing with General Brooke. He was forced to give names, and then he gave the same names. I mean, we've got the transcripts. They're incredibly long and hard to read, but that's where I lifted at. So there you go, MacArthur. We all remember things differently in our lives, and we always want to put our best foot forward, but he did name names, And
it doesn't really do anything to squash hazing.
It helped for a few years. It's a roller coaster.
Sure.
You put emphasis on it, it goes down. You dismiss a bunch of guys for being mean, and then 4 or 5 years later, you're right back. It's either going up or it's declining, but it's like the stock market.
Now, is it when the cadets are there, are they all taking the same classes, at this point? Because, I mean, you talk a bit in the book about how the professors look at their classrooms almost as like fiefdoms.
Yes.
And,
yes.
It's education by rote where you, repeat everything.
Yep.
Is there any, can you take elective courses, or
no,
everybody takes the same thing?
Yep. Okay. I think in my book, I have a couple pages showing the actual curriculum. Okay. So the first classmen always take the same thing together. And then the next year, there's no There's only one degree, and you're basically some type of an engineer. A little bit of mechanical and a little bit of civil, okay? A lot of science, a lot of math, and so on. Now, their language, French was still the language. They offered by that time Spanish because of the Mexican War and a few other things. But no, they all. So even when I taught, there was a class leader. They called them section leaders because guess what? The sections gathered information and they marched to the class together. And then they marched back together. That's where you get this section leader idea. So, but it was an okay curriculum. But by the 1870s, certainly by the 80s, West Point had fallen off the end of the table in engineering. Other MIT and all these other colleges had advanced. Harvard, the rest of them, Penn, they had new looks, new ways, modern things, and West Point was trying. We won the Civil War. It must have been good enough for Grant and Sherman and Sheridan, and it's good enough for you 40 years later.
Right. Now, another big element to MacArthur at West Point is the sports thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Now,
yes.
At West Texas Military Academy, where he goes to that prep thing before, he's the quarterback. He's the shortstop for the team.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves sports, but he's not big enough to play football.
No,
I mean, that's got to kill him, don't you think?
Yeah, it was. It was. One thing's there's a lot that I admire about MacArthur. Then there's the 2 or 3 hiccups which we'll talk about that I don't, or when he could become really petty. But he was the first captain, and then he volunteered to be the manager of the football team. He couldn't play, but he wanted to be part of it. So he's the cleat cleaner. He's the water boy. And this is time, 3 or 4 hours a day, where Paul Buckner and the rest of them are out there daily and the rest of them doing what they did, and he can't play, but he's there. I mean, first captain, you think, yeah, who would do that? Who would be, is it humility, humble, whatever, but he was on the baseball team. Now, in his memoirs and other histories, I scored the winning run. He scored a winning run of 4. Right. He didn't get a hit that game. He walked twice, but he scored a winning run, I think, about the 7th inning. One of the runs, one of the 4.
But he does letter.
Yes, he did. Yes. And that was the very first Army-Navy game. They're very proud of that. Yeah. 1901, I think it was.
I often think that A is more special to him than any award he ever receives.
Well,
I mean, because he wears
you can make that argument.
That robe throughout his life.
Yes, he did. And I have that in the book. I mean, he was in the trenches of France and he's got a sweater underneath his tunic or his raincoat. I mean, and he died at Walter Reed in his West Point robe.
Now, you mentioned about him being first captain. That's where he's selected to be the first captain of the Corps. Can you explain to us? I mean, we all hear the term, but what is a first captain's responsibilities? What are his duties as first captain?
Okay, let me lay it out this way. So a good share of the audio, whoever, maybe they have some ROTC time. When I was in ROTC, we had privates, we had sergeant majors, cadet lieutenants. I was a cadet major, and I was a cadet lieutenant colonel. All right, but at West Point, the highest rank is captain. So there's privates, and there's corporals, brevet corporal, and all these different things. There's sergeants, and it doesn't always conform exactly to the year group you're in. And then there's lieutenants. So today there's lieutenants and captains. So the first captain is the senior captain. Today, a first captain's time, his personal time, in the evenings or through the day, it is stacked. It is overwhelmed with ceremonies. Anytime a congressman comes, anytime someone from Sandhurst or dignitaries, the CEO of, General Electric, whatever, and a special guest, officers from the Korean military. First captain is at that dinner. The first captain is the first captain's here. Ceremonial all over the place. It's extremely trying. I knew several of the first captains, 2 or 3 in my classes, because they found out that Sherman Fleek didn't know how to write F, okay? So they knew they had passed my mill art class. Now, in MacArthur's day, it was more person-to-person kind of stuff. He didn't have as many ceremonies, the visitors, and it's small. I mean, he started out with 125 and 93 graduated. I mean, 400 cadets maybe. Yeah. Now we're up to 4,400. And so it was just totally different. So he had more time, but the tactical officers back then had removed themselves from direct responsibility of the Corps. Right. They'd walk around with their riding crops and they'd see a cadet with long hair or his hat is askew or something, boots or shoes are not shined. He wouldn't correct them. He would write up what they called became a belly, something. Skin sheet. Yeah, skin sheet, which is a memo. And it goes to the adjutant, then it comes down to the cadet, and you have 3 extra hours or something like that. Now, if you complained about it and you had the right to appeal, then that's called a bellyache. So the cadets are policing themselves. So this officer sees things from a distance. They weren't in the quarters, the barracks. When MacArthur comes back as superintendent, he put the single, not the married, but the single tax in the barracks to keep track of them. That's one reason that Omar Bradley hated his guts, because he had to sleep in the barracks with the cadets and he didn't want to do that when he went back as a lieutenant. Anyway,
now,
so
who picks the first captain?
It's the Academy of Leadership, even today. Yeah.
Okay.
The young men and women, and we've had a bunch of women of late be first captain. They're stellar. They're excuse this expression, they're stud muffins. They're amazing young people. They are in the top 5 or 10, not percent, top 5 or 10 of their class academically, and they're in great shape, and a lot of them play sports. And then they have all these additional duties being the first captain. It's horrendous. But back then, MacArthur probably had much more control over the day-to-day operations of the Corps, who was going to be on guard duty, this and that. That was all him. But it was so much smaller, but still he had a lot of duties like that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Now, the one thing, and you see it starting maybe at West Point, is these flashes in MacArthur of having his honor violated, as he thinks.
Yes.
We have the one example of when he's supposed to be excused from taking a test in one class, but he had missed some quizzes, so there's a big fight. But then the professor relents and lets him excuse. Then, as later you get into MacArthur's career, like before World War I, with the Veracruz, and when they don't give him the Medal of Honor, he writes a letter to the chief of staff.
Correctly,
right,
as the captain.
And so, I mean, he does not have a problem with going toe-to-toe with his superiors. But there's never any kind of retribution, against him. So what I'm saying is he's got to be so good that even though he's got these flashes like this, do they overlook him because his dad is who his dad was? Or what do you think?
My theory is this. He, like Alexander and Churchill and Napoleon, they were men of destiny, and they knew it. They knew it early on. They just knew it. How they knew it? Intrinsically, they knew it. Shakespeare, Twelfth Night, some are born great, some are achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrown upon them. MacArthur had all three. He was born in a family with a Medal of Honor recipient who became the 3-star general without a position because Taft hated his guts. and so on. And he was well loved, Arthur Sr., by the well, I guess the son of the judge, so that'd be the junior. His father, he was well loved, well respected, and Douglas worshiped him. Okay, all right. So he's in a connected family. They've got money. They've got all this. All right, and then he is born great, because he has. I mean, he achieves greatness because he's just brilliant. He's smart. He does all these things. He's just incredible in so many ways. I mean, the way he stands up before FDR and Nimitz and explains, no, we need to go to the Philippines, and he convinces people. You have a one-on-one with MacArthur, you're going to come out him as a hero, and you're going to do what he's going to say. That's all there is to it, because he was just brilliant, and he put in the time. He was well-read. He knew history and philosophy and economics. And then the times. He was greatness thrown upon him because he went through 2 world wars and a depression, and then the nuclear thing in Korea. And so it's Churchill in World War II, you rise to the top.
Do you think that frontier experience had a lot to do with that?
Yes, yes.
It's like he knows that he grew up in something unique
yes,
that nobody else understands.
He was extremely proud of it.
Yeah.
The line where he said, I learned to shoot and ride before I was out of diapers or something.
Well, he calls himself a frontiersman.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, it's Tiger Woods learning how to drive the ball at age 3, Yeah, so that's why he would do those things. That's why he would challenge Lieutenant Colonel Wright Edgerton that day. That, hey, what I know from the curriculum is if I have a certain average by quiz number 7, then I don't need to take the final, which he did. So to him, it was a point of honor. But he'd all missed some school days, and he'd missed a couple quizzes, but he made them up later. But Edgerton just thought, well, he has to be here for the final. I mean, it was a big dare.
Oh, yeah.
It was a huge gamble. He was gambling being kicked out, dismissed. But here's a lieutenant colonel that, well, should we say it, buckles under? Or he comes to the conclusion, all right, well, maybe he's right after all. Either he's right after all, or he says, I'm not going to stand in his way.
Tell us about what the state of West Point is after World War I.
Oh, it was in shambles. Let me say this. If I haven't said it yet in this episode. MacArthur to me is the second most personality of influence and direction and guidance over the academy. The first is Thayer. If Thayer hadn't come in 1817 in the 16 years there with Andrew Jackson and Adams and all the others, that John Quincy Adams, there would have been no West Point by the 1840s. It would have shriveled up and died. It was going that way. But Thayer created, and he is the father of the academy. He is number uno. MacArthur's number 2, because he saved West Point. They graduated 5 classes in 2 years. Mm. The last class that got the last class they didn't have to send overseas had only been there a year and a half. It went from an academy and a college to an officer training school in about a year. And that's what happened. And so he had 2 missions from the chief of staff at that time. Who was it? March, yeah. He said, you need to end hazing and so on. And West Point, he said 40 years behind time, more like 60 years behind time.
But hazing was one of the things March wanted him to go after.
That's right. And so he, that was his mission. And he went there and he shook up the world. And it pissed everyone. But he had a couple colleagues. William Gunnell was just outstanding. Now I consider him the first chief of staff. But back then, an adjutant, they didn't have chief of staff below like division level. About division level. Well, all those divisions were World War I. We had divisions in other wars, but they always went away after the war. Now we have the permanent. The Big Red One, the 3rd, Rock of the Marne, they're still here, the 82nd All-American Division. So he made him chief of staff, and Danford, the commandant. They were incredible officers. They had the same vision as MacArthur. They're graduates. William Gannot especially, just an incredible guy, articulate. And he's 1 year behind MacArthur. And by the end of the war, MacArthur is a brigadier general. And what's his name? Gannot was a major. So MacArthur, through luck or fate or destiny, is able to retain his rank. If he had taken that position at West Point, he'd retain his rank probably. So as much as he didn't want to go, he saw the reason behind it. But he also saw that he knew then, he always called the academy a monastery because of the paternalism. I mean, Freiberger and the rest, they did not trust the cadets to go to New York City. They didn't want them to be polluted. Didn't want them to be enticed with all just being around non-military. We have to protect them. And that's the way it was. So MacArthur has those challenges. Now, he set up what everyone calls it the honor code. It's actually honor system. What he did was take the back room midnight meetings, either in the trunk room or in the attic, where the cadets, okay, Smith is screwing up, let's harass him, and Jones over there, and so, and then we got this black guy, we got to take care of them, whatever. We're going to harass them or silence them or whatever. He took it from behind closed doors and put it in the open bay so people could say, cadet run administrative honor system. The honor code itself wasn't formally written down till Maxwell Taylor got there in 47. A cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal, 1947. Is 1970, they added the clause, or tolerate those who do, That's how it evolved over time. But MacArthur said, let's, with officer supervision, let the cadets do the investigating, make the indictments or the challenges, and then hold a tribunal to sort it out and to acquit and make a recommendation. But then the officer still, the commandant and the superintendent, would apply any type of, punishment. He took it out of, the cellars and the attics, which really helped things, but there was still young man, braggadocio, college kids. What can you say? Just like on any campus, that they're still dealing with, binge drinking and all kinds of problems.
Sure.
So that's what MacArthur did. And I think that's probably his most profound accomplishment with the academy, period, is the honor system, which has become a hallmark. Navy didn't even have anything close to that. They were still doing the, Horatio Hornblower, the British Navy style punishments, and they weren't flogging people, but, standing at mess in the rain and doing all that stuff. They didn't have a system like that. Now, he rescued the academy, reintroduced the 3rd year course and then the 4th year course through Congress, and he pushed things through. And athletics, every cadet and an athlete, which is a huge thing there today. Every cadet is in some types of sports program. They're either in a what we call intramurals, or they're in non-NCAA things like karate or volleyball and so on. But then you have the NCAA core sports, they call it the core sports. So every cadet has to be, involved in one of those
is this
three.
Directly related to his experience in World War I?
Absolutely.
These people, all our guys have to be able to.
Yes, because mainly the officers, the older officers, the majors that were in their 50s, they couldn't endure the hardships of combat, and he saw that. I mean, shoot, he got to France. He was at 37.
And like, man, the division commander was 65.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
immediately gone as soon as Pershing saw
Yeah,
him.
men took over, but so those things, and then he pushed a lot of other things. It didn't happen on his time, but he pushed to other things. Was accreditation, and they have the teams join what became later the NCAA. All right, to control and to govern that aspect. But the biggest thing was summer camp. Oh, talk about the hatred of changing summer camp. So he took the cadets down to Fort Dix and Fort Monmouth down there, do training with real soldiers, real tanks, real equipment. But what it did was break up this 30-day wonderful time at West Point. We're out of school. The cadets,
is the summer camp.
But
and
the families,
right?
It's been around for 100 years. It's Grant did this, Lee did this, and it was fun. A little bit of harassment here and there with the new plebes, but and the women with their parasols walking around, and young women coming up from New York City. But MacArthur ruined it all, and they changed it back. But within 10 years, they changed it back again
because he saw it as foolish.
Absolutely, he says. He said to Gano one day, because they were going to go out and do another practice parade. He says, "Well, I think we pretty well mastered the art of war from the War of 1812."
Now, we talked earlier about the curriculum being so rigid and stayed when he was there. Does he make moves to change that? To open it up?
Yes, he introduced aerodynamics and aeronautical science, and he tried to, but it was tough. But what he did do is, and you said the fiefdom. One day he just walked in unannounced in one of the classes, and Colonel Freiberg, he just went nuts, and he went all the way up to the Secretary of War complaining that the superintendent has no business being in the classroom. And MacArthur said, "Bo Pucky." That's my word. There's one time they had a big decision, and he said, "Look, hold the meeting at 4:30 because I want these guys to be hungry until we finish at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I want this meeting to go my way, so they'll be starving to death."
Well, at the academy, I mean, he's supposed to be there for a certain amount of time, but it's cut short.
There was no set standard. Okay. There had been there for 16 years. There had been 4 superintendents during World War I.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Some of them were, and even World War II. I mean, Eichelberger was there 14 months or something.
But Pershing puts him on that overseas list in 1922.
Yeah.
Now, is it Pershing's not too happy about all these reforms that West.
Yeah, he believed in hazing. He thought hazing, and so did what's his name, Bradley. Bradley hated MacArthur. He was there as an instructor. Ridgway got along with him. Mm-hmm. Ridgway was athletic director for a while. So this is interesting. As much as he loved football and pushed it, he lost all 3 years, the Navy, during his superintendency. So the summer training was huge, and the other things, and like I said, some of it reverted, then it reverted back. But they're here today. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, the honor system is tested every year with interpretations and so on.
Now, after he leaves, he does 2 more tours in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And then he's chief of staff.
So he got the job with the Olympics because of why?
Because of intramural
That's
sport.
right.
Yeah.
Because he loves sports so much, and the president guy died. I forget his name.
Yeah.
And so MacArthur's a 2-star then, and he does a great job. Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan's on his team.
Oh, yeah.
So that is a direct attribute that I bring out in my book. Because of his time as superintendent, he was the best qualified person, executive in the United States to handle the Olympics in a short amount of time.
Now, after the time as chief of staff, he goes to the Philippines in 1935, and he creates
A military
the
academy.
Philippine Military Academy.
Yep. Yeah, with Pastorio Martellino, who was class of 1920. So what's so interesting, we have this war with Spain. We get the Philippines, we pay off Spain. And then there's the fight for 3 years, as a nasty fight, with the Filipinos. But then they buckle under and they become Americanized to a degree, whatever. And it goes pretty well. They always kind of want to have their own freedom, but they start sending young men to the academy by 1909, And so Martellino is a perfect example. Of course, the Japanese killed him towards the end of the war. But the Filipinos, when I had visitors from these 4 nations, they always demanded to go to MacArthur statue. Australia, South Korea, Japan, Philippines. I'm banging the table here.
Well, I think
they demanded.
All our relationships with those countries start with Douglas MacArthur.
Yep.
Now, in the final few chapters, you summarize MacArthur and West Point connections to the end of his life. Ending with pretty much the duty on our country speech in 1962. But one thing you said that you thought was that West Point is kind of a memorial to MacArthur. Aside from maybe the MacArthur Memorial, it's one of the places you go to, and his whole presence permeates
everywhere.
Talk about that.
It is such a clash of aspects. It's a dynamic. It's really interesting. All right, so I have pictures of 4, 5, 7 pictures in the last chapter, the epilogue about the modern academy, and I show where every cadet and athlete, and on the fields of friendly strife or sowing the seeds that on other fields and other times reap the fruit of victory, whatever. It's not perfectly word, it's still there.
Yeah.
There's a barracks, the larger barracks.
Yes.
Yeah. MacArthur Barracks is the largest barracks there. His pedestal.
When was that built?
It was finished in 1969.
Okay, so after he.
So there was Bradley was a new construction. So was Eisenhower, which make a V, and then the mess hall was extended. Then Bradley's back here. Those are the 3 new buildings they knocked down all the old central barracks. It's the largest barracks. His statue there is the biggest pedestal, and it has all these inscriptions on the wall from his duty, honor, country speech. There's no in war. There's no substitute for victory. And duty, honor, country. Those 3 hallowed words reverently dictate what you can be, what you ought to be, what you will be. I mean, it's all right there. There's a plaza around the Ike statue. No words. No words. They have MacArthur's hat. Now, I'd been there about 5 years. I walk by this thing every day when I'd go swimming in the pool. And I look up there. It looked like a landing craft being sunk. But then one day I stopped and looked at, and it was in the reef, the stars, the reef of victory, that you have on the hat. And I thought, oh, that's MacArthur's hat. There's nothing.
And what is that?
It's an engraving on MacArthur Barracks.
Oh.
So there's his Medal of Honor plaque, and there's Wainwright, and then there's just a lot of things. Now, Thayer has 2 main buildings named after him: Thayer Hall and there's Thayer Hall and Thayer Hotel, Hotel Thayer, and then Eisenhower Hall and the Eisenhower Barracks. If I was in charge, I'd read. There's so many deserving graduates that Van Fleet doesn't have anything named after him. Merritt. I mean, there's all kinds of Sheridan. Yeah. And Sheridan. So I was involved with the renaming at West Point because of the Confederate stuff. Sheridan, I pushed him, and no one he was a great combat commander.
One of the best.
Yeah, in the Civil War. And so on. But because he's supposedly or attributed to have said the only good Indian is the dead Indian. Sherman said it too. They all said it back then. It didn't go anywhere, but I would rename those two buildings, but there's all kinds of stuff. So it is a memorial physically in the sense of statues, barracks, inscriptions, and everything, and some of the stuff he did, okay? But there's also the permeating spirit of the Academy of Duty, Honor, Country. 100 times on tours and on meetings, meeting people. When did MacArthur first say duty, honor, country? I said, well, it came out in 1898. It was a War Department thing. West Point came up with a model. Oh, he didn't coin it? No. He had a speech? No, he just made it a household name. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. People, hundreds, Jim. Where did MacArthur stand when he gave his famous speech? Right here in the mess hall. I gave a speech. No one knows one word from his speech. Or Reagan. Or,
any of those people.
Colin Powell,
yeah.
Any of them, It's just amazing, all the different Thayer Award recipients.
Well, any final thoughts about MacArthur and West Point?
Well, we're all blessed, or cursed or blessed, with opportunities and aspects to serve or be a part of or witness and do things in our lives, our 60, 70, 80 years on planet Earth. And those 14 years at the Academy were just an incredible experience for me. I arrived there thinking that MacArthur was, like Churchill, like Alexander, like Oliver Cromwell, grandiose historical figure. Don't know much about him. Do I really care? No. But as I dug deep and drilled into West Point history, and I had to learn it because I didn't go to school there, I would have never made it into the college. I would have never graduated. I'm not a math guy at all. I drilled down MacArthur. Everywhere you go, you hit MacArthur. Drill. Any sports, boom. Honor, boom. Modernization, boom. Training, boom. Everything. He's always there. Boom, boom, boom. And you just drill into it. And then when we were together up in Milwaukee in 2014, and I saw those 4 consul generals from 4 different nations praise MacArthur to no end. And that night, Kim Beasley, he was the ambassador from Australia, he said, when the war happened and the Japanese were threatening, who did we turn to? Douglas MacArthur, not Churchill. Churchill had his hands full. It was Douglas MacArthur. And Americans. So I just want to say this. I will end on this. I took a 4-star Air Force retired around. And we got up the MacArthur statue, and I started my spiel, and he said, Sherman, look, I would never want to serve under MacArthur. I think he's vainglorious and this and that. But he says, I'm not a fan of MacArthur at all. But if you look at his accomplishments and what he did and what he represented and so on, and with your own personal integrity, there's no way you can deny that he achieved some incredible things. So I went home that night, wrote that in my journal.
Well, the book is MacArthur and West Point, How the General and the Academy Shaped Each Other. And we've been talking with the author, Sherman Fleek. Sherman, thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you have questions, comments, or topic suggestions, the MacArthur Memorial team wants to hear from you. You can reach us at macarthurmemorial@norfolk.gov or find us on X at MacArthur1880 or on Facebook and Instagram as MacArthur Memorial.